Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Wednesday. It's the 25th of May. I'm Derek Clark. I'm joined this morning by Joshua Barrie. How are we doing, Joshua?
Good, Derek. Yes, settling into the off-season, as I'm sure you are as well. It feels strange to have no game in the immediate future. Quite nice after 65 last season, but
Yeah.
As always, plenty of Rangers news to talk about, even when it is the end of May.
Yeah. We're just slightly earlier this morning, folks. Joshua is hot-footing it over to Ibrox shortly. There's a book launch there, Joshua, if I'm led to believe. Is that right, about the history of Rangers? So, yeah, we'll bring you all the reaction from that later on today. Just a bit of housekeeping before we talk about all the news. As you can see in the ticker below, we've still got that great offer on the website just now, just £6 for 6 months worth of content. You pay your £6 and that's you sorted for the half year. It's fantastic that we've got this offer on just now. It's just head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe for all the details. And as you can see, the little icon in the top corner of your screen and the little note at the bottom, the One Football app. It's our sponsor for the Rangers Review. As you can see, the little video coming up there, just telling you about this app. It's totally free. It's your one-stop shop for all your footballing needs, so you can keep up to date with all the latest at Ibrox. You can research players, look at fixture lists, and also look at the opposition as well. You can keep abreast of all that's going on, not only in Scottish football, but down south and abroad as well. And there's a load of Rangers Review articles on there as well, so you can keep abreast of that if you're not on the website. So that's the One Football app. You can download it now for both Android and iPhone users. Okay, let's talk all things Rangers. That's why people that are tuning in, so many of you are doing so just now. Hi, folks. Joshua, the big news this morning, and I don't think it comes as a surprise, Aston Villa apparently closing in, according to the Times, on a deal for Calvin Bassey. Now, there's been a number of clubs reportedly interested in him, namely Chelsea, Wolves, Bayern Munich, you name it. He's a hot property at the moment. Does this come as a surprise for you? And what do you make of Aston Villa coming in for him? I guess it's an easy link, you'd imagine, with Steven Gerrard being the manager there.
Yeah, but the Aston Villa one's interesting, Derek, because presumably they're not going to buy him as a left back. They've bought Lucas Digne for 25 million. He's certainly, Calvin Bassey isn't going to rival Lucas Digne's final ball at the moment. I think it's one of the best in the world from left back, certainly in the Premier League. So if the Aston Villa links are true, going off the reports, then they're wanting to sign him as a centre-back, which is quite interesting, obviously, because they only played him as a centre-back, Beale and Gerrard, out of necessity, as opposed to, really seeing probably his long-term future there. Certainly, I think the first time he played centre-back, Derek, was that Sparta Prague game. And as we've discussed plenty, and viewers of the show will know, it kind of, he gradually improved under Van Bronckhorst to the point where in the final game of the season, the final two games of the season, one he's man of the match at left back, one he's man of the match at centre back. Such was his versatility this season. So the Villa one's interesting because, do you know what I'm trying to say? It's almost as if they've not realised he's a centre back. They've left for 6 months and they've thought this guy's actually would be quite handy. Would mean we don't have to play Tyrone Mings.
Yeah,
he's a left footer. But obviously, as we've discussed before, the best attribute that Calvin Bassey has, and it's something that Van Bronckhorst spoke about in a couple of recent press conferences, and Van Bronckhorst said, look, when I watched that game, that Hibs 3-1 game, semi-final, League Cup semi-final, which you'll remember Derek Van Bronckhorst was in the stands for, he said there was a moment after Bassey came on where Bassey moves into the midfield and pressurises a player, and there he saw how valuable he could be in terms of pressurising the opposition, being aggressive, almost being a stopper before the opposition gets to the defensive line. And then he's matched that with his, I think, teachability, his maturity, which comes through whenever he's got a microphone in front of him. So, yeah, it's interesting that he's now kind of superseded Kent and Morelos and Aribo and Kamara in terms of the one who all the transfer links seem to be directed towards. I don't know about you, Derek, but I kind of feel now in a position where I'd be surprised if I see him in a Rangers shirt again, just because his performance in that final was so good. And I don't think you can underestimate the significance of his performances against all these top opponents, personally.
Yeah, I sort of agree with it. Juice Master Gaming here. Rangers do need to try and lock him down for a couple of more years, just as an insurance policy, if you like, if they agree in a sort of buyout clause, a big money buyout clause, and I think that would suit all parties. And by all accounts, he's really happy at Ibrox. Everyone's seen his interview at Hampden at the end of the Scottish Cup final match, but it's one of those ones, Joshua, where if a club comes in for big money, and there's a lot of clubs down south that are sniffing about, it's a decision that'll be taken out of his hands. Now, in terms of valuation, what should Rangers? What is big money for Calvin Bassey? Now, I said on Monday, if Harry Maguire's 80 million, then I'm wanting 80 million, but I'm not. I'm not quite sure Rangers will be offered that based on the fact that he plays in Scotland, despite being the best player in the park on the biggest stage in the Europa League final. So, how much is Calvin Bassey worth, Joshua?
Well, I guess with these conversations, you're right. It always depends on the club that the player comes from and the length of the contract, crucially. And although Bassey's got 2 years left on his contract, I guess if you're thinking from a selling point of view, firstly, I don't think it's improbable that Bassey signs a new contract because he seems to really enjoy it. He said effectively said he wants to be playing his football here, or he's thinking about playing his football here. You know, he might look at it from his point of view and say, do you know what, I've only played half a full season, let's have a full season under my belt and then go. But then Rangers have also got to consider it from the other point of view of that. I don't think it's fair to say that the board have made the mistake of not selling players when they're at the peak valuation, because if Rangers, they win 55 undefeated, and if they go and win the Europa League, which they were so close to doing, you look at boys like Glenn Kamara, Joe Rebo, Ryan Kent, and Morelos to get into that point, you think, they gambled in it, and it so nearly paid off. So I think you've, when you're talking about maybe not selling someone like Barisic or all these players at a specific time, you have to consider the alternative, which is success at the football club. But with someone like Calvin Bassey, is his stock ever going to be higher? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I think Rangers would look for, if you again contextualise it, if you're selling Nathan Patterson for £16 million, Bassey's a little bit older. Bassey's played a lot more football, really well, a considerable amount more football, certainly been a more important first team player. And as you say, Derek, he's also done it on the biggest stage. And Patterson had some impressive performances for Scotland, but I think Bassey doing it in the Europa League final, you're right, it's one of the highest highest levels in football, isn't it? I think even more so often than a lot of international games. So you're looking north of 20 million, I think. Undoubtedly, I can't remember how many years were on Patterson's contract by the time he left, but you definitely got to be looking north of that. I don't know how much the length and the kind of strength of the contract comes into it, but who knows? Because Rangers will have to sell some players, and we've been speaking a lot about that this year. There's going to be how many players will go, and at some points Rangers will have to take that money and reinvest. I know this is a completely different context, but you look at what Rangers did in terms of selling players after 2008, reinvesting it. This squad does need refreshing,
Yes.
And a European run doesn't overshadow that as much as the European run was fantastic in and of itself. So it'll be really interesting to see. But obviously, we'd love to see Calvin Bassey around for a bit longer, because I just think he's such a fantastic player and obviously loves the club.
Yeah, no, there's a point made, Joshua, that Gerrard did play him as a centre back against Falkirk, but for me, he's really blossomed under Giovanni van Bronckhorst. I don't think. I know he had a great game at left back against Dunfermline in the League Cup at the start of the season under Gerrard, but for me, it's Van Bronckhorst who's catapulted him into this sort of one of the hottest properties in Europe. So for me, it would be a shame for him to leave at this point, where I think his glass ceiling is somebody mentioned Nathan Patterson. I think it's even higher than that. I think he can get even better than we've seen even last season, which we have to remember as his first full season playing consecutive men's football.
Yeah, and I think you're right about that, Derek. And also, I think you've got to remember when you're looking at Van Bronckhorst and Gerrard, the style of centre-back that Gerrard's played, so let's take Hollander as the left-sided option compared to Bassey. Very different profiles, but that's, and again, look at someone like Stephen Davis playing as that number 6 role compared to a Jack and Lundstrom, double number 6 under Van Bronckhorst. Van Bronckhorst football is a bit more open and high risk defensively. Gerrard was narrow and compact. He didn't want Hollander kind of stepping out, fighting 1v1 battle. I mean, Hollander would come out and track strikers sometimes, but not in the kind of isolated acres of space that you see Bassey in a 3v3 at the back or a 2v2 at the back. And Van Bronckhorst football, I think it gets the very, very, very most out of someone like Calvin Bassey, because by him, fighting that 1v1 battle and Van Bronckhorst effectively knowing, look, no one's really going to get past Bassey, because even we've seen in the final, if someone does get past Bassey, he normally catches up. Yeah. And what that does, obviously, is that enables maybe a midfielder to sit higher, or enables you to play with maybe one slightly more advanced when you're defending. So I think Van Bronckhorst football is far more suited to it. And yeah, I mean, the Falkirk game, I don't know how much you can read into one game there. I mean, Bassey obviously had played a small bit of football. I think predominantly in a back three at Leicester, but not to this extent. I mean, this was the bottom of the barrel. Who can play there after Hollander was injured, Balogun was injured, Simpson was out of the picture, and Bassey stepped up really, really impressively, didn't he?
Yeah, he certainly did. This is one that's not going to go away, folks, I'm afraid. And as Joshua said, I think I'll be surprised if he's in a Rangers jersey come the start of next season. But I think tying him down on a longer-term contract would make sense, and let's hope Rangers can do some business there. One player who has left, a youngster, Rory Wilson, has confirmed that he's leaving Rangers. Scotland under-17 forward, 16-year-old player. He was linked with a move to Aston Villa earlier on in the season. He mentioned that Rangers have been brilliant for him. There's no getting away from that, but it's time to move on and get to the next level. I'd like to thank Rangers for everything they've done for me, because it's been great for me over the last 8 years, but it's time to leave. I'll probably be going down south. I'll wait and see what happens in the next couple of weeks. Everything will be sorted very soon at Rangers. All the coaches have been fantastic for me. I can't thank them enough for their help. I want to go down south and try and prove myself and become a top player, and that's what I'm trying to do. Now, he scored 49 goals last season, Joshua. I'm not too sure how much you've seen of him, but I think this is the fact of life. Young players that are developed in Scotland at clubs like Rangers, there's going to be teams down south that are going to cherry pick them, and that's just the way it goes, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's actually not happened as much as you'd maybe think. You look at someone like Leon King, there's a lot of links to him, and because Rangers have such facilities, because this is why I think arguments about playing in the lowland leagues or playing in the UEFA, I think it's elite youth division or elite youth league. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
allowing players to look at the pathway of Rangers and say this is the best place for me. It's why so much work goes into it and why it's so important. Obviously, I think there's a lot of high hopes for Rory Wilson, and as you say, I didn't know it was 49 goals, but that's considerable.
Club and country.
Yeah, but you see it with Celtic losing Ben Doak to Liverpool as well. I mean, we obviously don't know where Wilson's going to go, but when these clubs can offer so much to players who are so young, and there'll be so much going into who knows what type of money these guys will be on, but I'd imagine when you're that age, when you're not even promised a footballing career, or a long footballing career at that, you've probably got to be thinking about all these factors that you wouldn't have considered 20 years ago when you were a young player. So disappointing to see him go, obviously, and it'll be interesting to see where he ends up, because as you said, I think it was Aston Villa he'd been linked to quite considerably, so we'll keep our eye on that one.
Yeah, Gary Clark says, do we get compensation for this guy? I'm not too sure. Terry Monroe says out of contract. Yeah, I'm not too sure if Rangers will be due any compensation. We'll try and find out for you. Question, a really good question come in here from Heller Deary. Joshua, are you drinking red wine?
No, it's a bit of what do you call it? One of these glasses that looks darker than it is. So no, Heather, I'm not. I don't have the stomach for that. Absolutely not. Must have caught the red somewhere, but I don't know where.
Yeah. This is a question I wanted to throw to you, Joshua. Ali Quinn mentioning Nikola Katic. Now, I touched on this with Johnny on Monday. Nikola Katic, of course, out on loan in Croatia this season. He's going to come back in the summer. Are you one for giving Nico a chance under the new management?
I don't think so. I mean, it's difficult. It's difficult with Katic because he's
such a cult hero, isn't he?
Yeah, he really is. And obviously, you look at, I mean, Gerrard loved him, didn't he? Gerrard absolutely loved him. Again, I mean, I just don't think that. I think what you'll see, you look at John Suter at Hampden on when was it, Saturday, someday recently, and what he does really well, along with Goldson. Although I was speaking to a friend of the show, Craig Vickers, and he was saying he thinks Suter is even better than Goldson at kind of stepping into the midfield. You know, distribution aside, in terms of stepping into midfield and from defence. You look at Bassey on the other side, his high, aggressive, mobile defending. I don't think Katic fits either of those profiles. I don't think his distribution is ever been something that, you know, how many times have you seen Katic hit a diagonal 30 yards in the way that Goldson has, Derek? So for me, sorry, my wife just asked me if I've got keys, which I do. Let me tell you a story, Derek, actually, just on a side note.
Go for it.
So I came home and my wife had been watching the final with some of our friends. And one of my friends, I can't remember, I think it was maybe the Stephen Davis shot. She said to me, why did he take that shot on? And obviously it was quite close. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, and completely unironically and very genuinely, she was like, well, the XG must have been about 0.03. I just had a moment where I thought, it's like osmosis, where if you speak about something enough, and if you moan, you know, when the TV's on, there's a long shot, I always say, what a stupid decision, to the point where Beth is watching the game with my friends and complaining about the XG of a long shot. So I think that is a full circle moment of this season I wanted to share with you, Derek.
Yeah, so you're boring your wife with XG
so
chat.
Much. Yeah. So much. So she said, show me what the XG was, and that's Stephen Davis shot. So he logged on to StatsBomb, as you do on Tuesday evening.
What was the XG, incidentally?
I actually can't remember. I think it was like 0. Well, it was actually higher than you'd think because the keeper was out of position.
Right, okay.
I'm going to go find it just now, but so big movements in my household.
Right, before we go, folks, just a couple of transfer rumours. Some comments coming in. There was a boy that mentioned Matteo Cassiera, plays for Sochi in Russia, former Ajax forward, played under Dave Voss as a youngster. Rangers linked with him, a £2 million bid a few days ago. I'm not too sure about the legitimacy of that, but we'll try and find out for you. There's another question that came in with regards to Dapo Afolayan, Craig Marshall. I've watched some footage, looks a real good player. Yes, Craig, top goal scorer for Bolton last season, 16, 17 goals I think he scored. Can play right across the front three. Really skillful, great feet. Was the most foul player as well in League One last season. Defenders can't cope with him when he's on his
penalty
game.
To Rangers, Derek. Penalty to Rangers.
Oh my God, he'd get about 20 penalties if he joined Rangers. I swear to God, he's that sort of player. The opposition hate him. He's one of those sort of players where he really roils the opposition, so he'd fit right in at Ibrox. But I would have no qualms if Rangers were to bring Dapo Afolayan into the club. He's a right good player when he's on his game. But again, he's one of those, Joshua. I think that is going to depend on players leaving. Is it the end of the road for the likes of Ryan Kent and Joe Rebo and all that sort of stuff? You'd imagine there is going to be a good few heading out the door.
Well, firstly, Derek, 0.06 was the XG on that shot.
Wow, so, excellent.
Yeah. Beth thought it was 0.03.
Talking your wife there, Gary Clark says, Joshua.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there was that photo of Goldson, Kent, Aribo, Kamara,
yes,
Bassey, and I think someone had said on Twitter, do you think that's the last time you'll see them all?
Last day at school photo, wasn't it?
Last day at school photo, yeah. I mean, I guess the recruitment is either angled through the fact that you maybe Van Bronckhorst keeps the core of the squad, a couple sign new contracts, and it's a case of bringing in maybe a few first teamers, but really bulking up the squad with some backup players as well. Or is it going to be these 5 goal it's hard to know. You've also got to consider the likes of Morelos, someone like Hollander, who's been injured a lot these last 3 years when you think about it. Balogun, you've got to consider, he's out of contract. He was speaking in the post-match press conference about wanting to stay, but that's not confirmed. Barisic, is he going to be the first choice left back for another season? You get the players leaving on loan, so it's a big job. There's a lot of. I think it'll be the latter. I think it'll be a pretty new look first team next season for me, Derek, and that will require players that can come in and do the business right away. Rangers do have a lot of sellable assets. That's the important thing. But it's Ken, Morelos, and Aribo, I think will either sign a new contract this summer or leave, because I don't think Rangers will let any of them run down their contracts.
Yeah. Okay, folks, that'll do us there. Sorry if I couldn't get to your comments. So many of them coming in, but thanks very much for all your interaction, as always. Joshua, as I mentioned, is going to hot-foot over to Ibrox. He's speaking to the club historian.
That's this afternoon, Derek. I've got a meeting with Bossman Johnny first this morning. So we're speaking through. I see James is asking, are we doing these videos throughout June? We are.
Yes.
James, we're doing right through the off-season, but we're obviously using this kind of off-season as well to look at future content, lots of exciting plans. So we're not going anywhere at all, apart from on our weekends, are we, Derek?
Absolutely not. So now is the time to really take advantage of that great offer. As you can see in the ticker below you, folks, just £6 for the next 6 months. So £1 a month, it works out as you pay your £6, that's you sorted for half a year. Just head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe. Okay, we'll be back again tomorrow morning, but until then, enjoy